Accent shift. In this module, I want to look at the accent shift that can sometimes happen when you have the vav consecutive. Both the vav consecutive with the preterite and the vav consecutive with the perfect. Now, the accent shift is in opposite directions. One direction with the preterite and the other direction with the perfect. And it only occurs with some verbs and forms. So, for the preterite plus vav consecutive, the shift is toward the beginning of the word. In other words, towards the vav. So in Hebrew, that'd be towards the right, because Hebrew writes this way. So we're talking, the shift is this way for the preterite. And with the perfect plus vav consecutive, when you do have this accent shift, it goes the other way, vakatal t. Now, of course, English writes the other way, so it's a bit confusing. Let me write this again. So we have vav. Here's our preterite. Okay, the shift, if you have it, will be this way, and vakatal. This is our vakatal here, or our perfect plus vav consecutive. The shift will be this way. This is towards the beginning of the word. This is towards the end of the word. And that's why, if you remember, or if you viewed the module on varying terminology, where I talked about the different ways that we can talk about vav consecutive, one way to talk about this, perfect plus vav consecutive, is vakatal. And they will sometimes call it the vakatal t when they want to emphasize that we're talking about the vav consecutive, because all they're doing here is using the 1cs form, vakatal t, and they're putting the accent here. They're emphasizing this little accent. That's the stress that's moved over there. So sometimes they put that right into the name, just to be clear which one they're talking about. Okay. So we have accent going in different directions. With the preterite plus the vav consecutive, it only occurs in some verbs, and these are related to the short forms. I'll introduce you to them when we see them. They're irregular forms, so it'll be a while before we encounter those. And in the perfect, it only shows up in the 2ms and the 1cs form. So you, masculine singular, and I. And even there, it doesn't show up consistently. So it's only in some forms, some verbs or some forms, that you'll see this accent shift. Let's look at two examples, or really one example of the katal, the vakatal t. Katal plus vav conversive, the accent shift there. I won't show you the one with the preterite yet, because we don't have the irregular verbs. We'll do that later. So here we have ufakadti. Pakad is our regular paradigm verb. This is a perfect form, 1cs. Okay. I'll show the next one here first. So this is 1cs. 1cs perfect. I visited, let's say. Good way to translate it. So we have this one, ufakadti, and then we have ufakati. Okay, we have this accent shift. You see, if you memorized your paradigm with the correct stress, you'll know that this one is pronounced fakad, or pakadti, or ufakadti. What's happening here is that because this is a labial, when you put a vav in front of it, it goes to u. You can go back to chapter 7 and see your rules of how the coordinating conjunction changes if you've forgotten that. And with that, because this is a vowel, we lost our dagash lene. So now we're going to say f rather than p. It's a bit unfortunate that our paradigm verb is a begad kafat letter. If it wasn't that, and we wouldn't get into these issues here. If it wasn't begad kafat, so it had this dagash lene, and if it wasn't the labial, some people use katal. Okay, the advantage of katal is that it's neither begad kafat or labial, and so you just put a v. This would be v katal t, if I can squeeze it in here. That's the same form with the verb katal rather than pakad. And so this one then would be vakatalti, vakatalti, vakatalti. And that's simply the name that they sometimes call it, right here. See, vakatalti. That's just the form, the 1cs form. So here we have a shift toward the end of the word. And when you see that shift, which only occurs in the 1CS or the 2MS, second masculine singular, and again, not even all the time there, but it will only show up in those ones. When you do see the shift, you know that this is a Vav conversive. And so this needs to be translated according to the verb that precedes it, some sort of future or modal or whatever. This one you don't know. This could be either, because the accent shift doesn't tell us. But when you do see the accent shift, then you know it needs to be Vav conversive. So, accent shifts can happen in some forms and some verbs. They don't happen all the time. You can't rely on them, but when you do see them, then you know that you have a Vav consecutive or a Vav conversive, or whatever you want to call this thing here.